For example, I remember one time in church as like, I don't know, I was like maybe 13 or 14, and someone came up to me and said, "You know what, you're a leader." I was like, "What?" Because I did not see myself as a leader at
Mm.
all. And they said, "You're a leader." And I was like, I've never been up front. I've never taught. I never led anything. I've never been in front of people. But he says, "Well, what I noticed was the way you interact with people. You encourage them. You talk to everybody. You notice everybody." And to me, that didn't connect that was part of being a leader, being able to connect with people, that charisma. To this day, I dwell on that. I said, "Oh, wow, that is part of being a leader."
All right, we are now. You might have noticed I'm starting off, Art. We're switching roles. This is
Not
on
right.
charisma. Well, welcome to ReedFlections, Life, Leadership, and Learning. It's a podcast that hopefully is changing lives. That's what we're trying to achieve here. And so, just to kind of recap where we've been, we have, first of all, I'd like to introduce Art. I'm new at this hosting thing.
Not as easy as it looks, is
well,
it?
it's way easier than I thought, actually. But ultimately, I have Art Calderon here, and he is a husband, a father, and a podcast host. But then ultimately, the last 4 episodes, we've had the first section, which was on why to develop leaders, and we had maximizing potential, creating positive experiences, and then multiplying for the exponential growth. Those are the reasons why. And then finally, that they can create environments for others. So that's provisional role of meeting others' needs. And then last episode, we said, who should you develop? And it was really around character. And so then now we're on episode 6 of our second season. And this is the why I've chosen you, Art, because one of the things I noticed early was your charisma. And, we probably identify those characteristics around leaders first. And we say, hey, this person got a lot of charisma, and we presume they're a leader.
Right.
But sometimes they have a ton of charisma and they just become an entertainer or a, podcast host. One of the two, that's what you do with charisma. So ultimately, charisma is keeping and getting others' attentions, getting and keeping their attention. So as we're switching this up, ultimately now, Art, you have a ton of charisma. So ultimately, who is someone that you have identified that has high charisma that you admire?
First of all, let me say, this is not comfortable in this seat. I sit in that seat, and I don't change well. But
we gave you your pillow. I mean, what else do you need?
That does help. That does help.
Right.
Charisma. I think about my father. My father, Arthur Calderon. He still alive and well, 82 years old, living in Southern California with my mother, good health, and still charismatic after all these years. Dad worked for the California Department of Corrections for 35 years. One of his roles near the end of his career was the warden at San Quentin State Penitentiary. And it's infamous. Everybody I think that I've talked to has heard of San Quentin, and Dad was the warden there. So one would think someone who was a warden would be kind of cold and hard and, not very warm. And I'm sure Dad had that in him when the time came. But that doesn't really describe my father at all. Dad is actually very engaging and entertaining. We talk on the phone a couple times a week, catching up on things, his grandkids are doing or his great-grandkid in this we also have. And Dad was a popular leader among his peers and among those he led, even among the inmates. I've heard stories that there was some grudging respect there. Now you think about San Quentin, you're talking about thousands of people, not just the inmates, thousands of guards, of officers, of administrators, of civilian workers, people coming and going, millions, tens of millions of dollars in the budget, and he ran that all. And when he retired, there was a huge turnout. A lot of people were there. A lot of people who come up to me find out that who are in that industry or had some sort of connection there, find out that who my father is, and they want to talk to me because of who my father was. And to me, that speaks a lot about the charisma and the endearing effect that had on others.
I see that elements in your charisma. Sometimes when we're talking, I feel like I'm in a prison and I can't really get out. And so I can see that carrying through generationally as
I'm
well.
glad it
But
works.
yeah, you're glad it works well. You definitely learned something from your dad, and that sounds like he's very charismatic.
One time we were at a funeral. My father. This is about 3-4 years ago.
You
my
love
father-
these light topics, right?
Yeah.
Prison and funerals. I mean, wow, Art, we give you one opportunity here and you're talking about prison and funerals. Continue.
Well, there's more. There was a man who came to this funeral, and he was a former inmate that my dad knew. He was this hardened criminal that was violent. And this guy was one of the worst. He's one of the worst. He came to that funeral, a changed man. It was years later. He actually became a minister, sort of a minister to people like himself, street minister, a lot of ex-convicts and such. And he came up, and him and my dad shook hands. They talked about the old days, and they were both two like old warriors who had come together over peace. And I got a nice picture of the two of them together. And that spoke a lot to me about the charisma that he saw in my dad, and ultimately vice versa.
Yeah, and I think he built on character, right? Your dad had established character and credibility by being consistent. At the same time, is that charisma is what can break through, right? Because you can have people of high character and they can't break through because they don't have charisma. And that charisma is a way that just is different. It breaks through, hardened criminals and barriers, et cetera, et cetera. So, people with charisma can communicate well, and they ultimately have more sway, just as your dad did with this hardened criminal. And so, when did you first notice your own capacity to communicate and keep attention?
I remember a few instances growing up where someone would point that out to me, and it really did surprise me. And I think I lacked the confidence to be able to really appreciate that skill or that gift. For example, I remember one time in church as like, I don't know, I was like maybe 13 or 14, and someone came up to me and said, "You know what, you're a leader." I was like, "What?" Because I did not see myself as a leader at all. And they said, "You're a leader." And I was like, I've never been up front. I've never taught. I never led anything. I've never been in front of people. But he says, "Well, what I noticed was the way you interact with people. You encourage them. You talk to everybody. You notice everybody." And to me, that didn't connect. That was part of being a leader, being able to connect with people, that charisma. And it to this day, I dwell on that. I said, "Oh, wow, that is part of being a leader." Then later on, I remember in high school, we had this debate part of our government class, I think it was. And so we had the whole school talking or as the audience. And it was me and another fella, and I didn't prepare at all, or very little. I just read through. I don't even remember what the subject was. I was bringing up one side, and this guy was bringing up the other side. Now, this other person, much more popular than I was. He was an athlete in all kinds of sports. Everybody knew him. I don't think anybody really knew me, but he was less prepared than I was. And he got up there, and he's like, "Well, I think you should believe this because I just think you should." And I was like, "Well, I can certainly do better than that." And I got up there and I did do better than that. And people enjoyed it and they laughed and I made some funny jokes. And then I sat down and he brought up the counterpoint, which was essentially the same thing as he said before. And I said, and I was in my groove and I got up there and I shook my finger and I said, "Now let me explain to you folks." And I don't remember what I said, but I engaged with that community. I engaged with that audience and they responded. And that's another time when I said, "Wow, that was kind of fun." And I was able to connect with people. Now, eventually, I was able to appreciate that more and use that for positive things. Even today, in the in the role that I'm at, I have a lot of connections with a lot of people, and I always try to remember that I should use that for something positive. I should try to use that to uplift, to encourage. Especially when you never know what people are going through. You never know what kind of day or weekend they had. You never know what's going on in their life, in their family, in their relationships. And maybe I'm the only one that day or even in their life who can be encouraging, who can be positive. And to me, that holds value far beyond the immediate.
Yeah, and I think one of the hard parts about being a host is I have to compliment you And that's one of the things I'm working on, but we'll see how this goes. That's the thing I think I noticed early with you. You had charisma and you were able to pick up the room at the very least, right? And some of that's through your interjecting humor and otherwise connecting to people. And I think sometimes even noticing the person that's unnoticed
Yeah.
or otherwise pick up on that. So, what is an example of how you can use that charisma, noticing someone that was unnoticed or needed to be picked up for
Hmm.
good, as kind of you were leading down that path?
Yeah. My kids always are always teasing me because if we go somewhere in public and I see someone in a room or in a crowd that kind of doesn't fit in, and then maybe they look different, they're acting different, immediately I start noticing them and I start gravitating. Oh, here goes dad. And I do. And I enjoy that. I'll go over and I'll find, especially I speak Spanish. So if they speak Spanish, then we're talking. Okay, where are you from? How long you been here? Or if they're from another country, oh, well, tell me about the country. If I know something about the country, I'll interject in the conversation. And I get a rise out of lifting that person up a little bit, especially if they feel marginalized. I mean, either in the room or in society in general. And to me, again, that holds a lot of value. The leader who's in the room already, or the popular person, or the person that everybody knows. They're already getting their props.
Yeah,
Everybody's
sure.
showing them their love, and that's fine. They're taken care of. But that person right there, let me talk to that person. Let me find out what their life is like. Let me value them. I remember years ago I had an opportunity to go to Afghanistan,
Hmm.
and I went to Afghanistan, and we had our meals in this communal room, and the meals were made by this woman who would never join us. She would cook the meal in the kitchen, and then she would stay in the kitchen and she would sit on the floor behind the wall,
Wow.
you know. And so I would make it a point afterward to go over there and look in there, and I would say, thank you very much. And it was like everybody was kind of embarrassed. Honestly, I don't know what kind of cultural taboo I just crossed right there, and I just said thank you to her. And to me, that was honestly one of the highlights of the trip, is having that small connection. Who knows what kind of life that person had? Who knows?
Yeah, and that's the power of charisma, right? In the moment, we're leveraging our ability to connect and communicate and lift someone's spirit up. But she probably remembers that just as much as you did. That there was, hey, this soldier that was enjoyed what I was, serving, and then ultimately connected with me each and every time, leveraging the charisma. And it takes a little bit of effort to go and do that, and maybe you're uncomfortable. You don't know the cultural dynamics that are at play in that case, and so obviously leveraging that charisma for good is lifting other people's spirit up. One of the things that you do regularly at our convention is the salute to service. And
Mhm.
that's where you leverage your charisma to literally thank in your own way the people that have, but at the same time as you're leveraging your charisma and that salute to service at the convention each and every year. So how do you use your charisma to, communicate those who have served our country and then maybe
Uh-huh.
have some unbecoming photos
Yeah.
of their
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
journey?
Well, all of us who were vets at one time, especially those who were vets many years ago, like myself, you look at the pictures of those days and you go, "Oh my goodness, what have I done?" And we were all young and in top physical shape and other thing at the time, and those are years ago. So it's fun to look at those and point out the obvious, that we've all changed. And so what I do is before months and months before our annual convention, I'll try and contact as many of these old vets as possible and say, "Hey, get me these old pictures. Okay, give me the pictures back when you were a young hard charger. Let me see it." And then I'll get the picture, and hopefully it's boot camp or basic training. And to them, I think as well, they appreciate the recognition from the main stage. They appreciate someone remembers that with them. And even when I do poke fun at them, how much weight we've all gained and things like that. It's fun, but there's also that there is sort of a bonding there. There's a shared history there, and there's a recognition of the service that they did do, and it's a lot of fun, and we have a good time, and I get a good response from it.
Yeah, and I see it lifts the spirits of the room,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's somewhat of charisma, right? You can see that the emotion of the room is trending the wrong direction, and it may not just be about the person,
Hmm. Hmm.
as we gave with a previous example of the woman that was serving the food, but it might be about the room that they need a lift, right? There's just times where we can be down or circumstance can be dour,
Hmm.
but they definitely need a lift for the room.
Hmm.
And charisma is a powerful force, right? I mean, we look at these entertainers, we look at these people, and we look to have that force drive us forward. And you can definitely see those who have strong charisma that can drive a powerful force. And as we talked about the good, there's also the powerful force for bad,
Absolutely.
right, and evil. And so where is a time where you've seen that charisma can, be used for destructive purposes and just destroy cultures or organizations or even people groups?
Yeah. Well, history's replete with charismatic, horrible leaders. They had the skill set. They had charisma. They had the ability to sway entire groups of people or nations in bad ways. And I think it's probably a lot more prevalent people that we know in our day to day lives that maybe touch us more. I've had leaders in my lives that were charismatic, that were able to sway people and move people in a certain way, and they did it, and they used their powers for bad, to self-serve. I've had leaders before. I had a particular boss who did not trust anybody, and he was charismatic though, and so he would bring people into his inner circle and try to get gossip out of them, try to get them to treat other people, try to get me to treat other people bad. I had one particular boss who wanted me to sell something to a client that they did not need.
Mhm.
It was they had a need, and I could solve it with a much simpler, less expensive solution. But he wanted me to sell him this thing was like 1,000 times more expensive, and he wanted me to sell him that. And to him, the ends justified the means. Like what we want to do is we want to sell. That's what we're doing. We want to sell this thing, and I could tell my boss, well, we sold so much. But to me, I was like, that is a horrible use of your power, of your charisma in this case. And it's again, that's why it's important. If you have some connection with people, if you have the ability to lift someone up, make sure you're doing it in a way, back to your point, you have character. So you can look at yourself in the morning and you can not have to tell lies about what you did before, but use that charisma to do something that's ethical, to use something that's positive and encourage others, not something that would bring embarrassment on you.
Yeah, and I think, the challenge with charisma is that the attention you're garnering can be, really like a drug. It can be just
Hmm.
very engaging and you want more of it, right?
Sure.
And that's where you can see the path you choose is saying,
Hmm.
okay, do I get more attention by doing bad things and I get benefit from that
Hmm.
versus lifting others up? And I think it really comes back down to the point you were making with as a character is this for serving the general public? So it's a self-serving means in that regard versus the serving of a community or larger people group. And so charisma is very powerful. And ultimately, we understand the development of our skills necessary there, but we should always go back to that first step, which is character, and use it for the leverage of good to make sure that we're making a better place, the community. As leaders, we should want to leave the place better than we came, and that people are leaving our followership in a better position as a human afterwards. And charisma is a powerful tool to break through to do that. And of course, here we are at the end of episode 6. And, it's been entertaining for me. I think this is the best host we've ever had. I think some of the commentary could be worked on, Art.
We'll work on it.
Yeah, go ahead, work on it. But, maybe next time I'll let you come back here to this hosting side.
That's
way
where
you
I
can-
belong, really,
That's
right
where
over
you
that
belong,
that
right?
seat.
We'll leverage your charisma. But, it's been great to hear from your perspective, really how you've developed your charisma through the process and learned going forward. And so we'll let you do your own recap here before I jump in with the last
All
word.
right. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, Reed, for hosting and taking the other seat. Episode 7's coming up, right? I think we need to continue thinking about who you should choose to develop as a leader, and we'll discuss why leaders must demonstrate a high level of commitment.
Now, if you are a leader and you have charisma, or maybe you lack charisma, recognize the power of charisma. If you lack charisma, that's something to work on. You may have the character, you may have the commitment that we're going to talk about, you may have all the other tools in your toolbox, but you need charisma. Charisma is really what helps be the secret sauce that connects you with the audience. Now, if you have high charisma and you're lacking character, you really need to make sure that you're leveraging your charisma for good. You want to connect with others and inspire them, drive them forward so that ultimately, as you're connecting them, they can live a better life. So look inside your heart. Why are you leveraging your charisma? Are you doing that for your own self-serving purposes, or are you doing it to make people be better by connecting with them, breaking through their barriers to ultimately help them see a better life? We look forward to seeing you on the next episode where we talk about using that character to benefit others. As a result, leveraging your charisma so that through commitment, you can see real change.